Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is AJ from the Pattern Journal, and today we're going to talk about The Acolyte. This is the latest Star Wars original series from Disney, and this one is a little bit special, more than the ones we've had in the past, because this is not set during the Clone Wars, and it has very little to do with the Skywalker saga. And when I talk about the Skywalker saga, I mean all the main characters we've seen, like Anakin and Yoda and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and all those other characters. This is set 100 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, so almost none of those characters are even around. Of course, Yoda is around possibly as a Jedi Master, and we've seen little bits and pieces of some cameos that may show up, and they're Jedi Masters that we know from the first three movies of the prequel trilogy. But on the whole, this is a step away from all of that, and that's why this is very exciting because whether we're talking about live action or even animation, this is something that Disney and even Lucas himself, they've never really delved into. And that opens up so many more possibilities for loads of new characters, whether they're heroes or villains, anti-heroes, reluctant heroes, what have you. There's so much potential in this series. And this week we got a special premiere of 2 episodes on Disney Plus, and I saw the episodes yesterday. They came out pretty much in the rest of the world yesterday, whereas America and a few other territories, they got to see them 2 days before. So, anyways, this is going to be my review of the first 2 episodes, and I'm gonna have the trailer playing in the background here. The audio is gonna be off so I can talk, but just so you guys have something to latch on to what's happening in the series as a whole. But you know, like I said, this is a very bold new era for Star Wars storytelling, and what I really loved about all of this were all the bold new characters, and some of them are characters that are taken from the High Republic novels. I believe Master Warnescaro is one, and some of the others. I'm not sure. I'm not really into the High Republic yet. I have never really read the books or the comics or whatever. But what I really like is that we see a Jedi Order that is at its absolute prime. You can argue that in the events of the prequel trilogy, that's when the Order was at its prime, but that is pretty much those last few years just before the takeover of Darth Sidious as the Sith Master. This is when the Jedi are at the peak of their powers, as we've seen in the movies, and even in so many episodes of Clone Wars. By the time those events were taking place in episode 1, 2, and 3, the Jedi had lost their way. They weren't peacekeepers. They weren't real peacekeepers anymore. They weren't listening to the will of the Force, and people like Qui-Gon were considered to be pretty much fringe troublemakers, and the rest of the Jedi Order didn't really align with what their thinking was, and they made so many mistakes, and it all culminated in the destruction of the Order and the rise of Darth Vader and the Galactic Imperium and Emperor Palpatine and everything. But overall, we get right into the thick of the action for the first 2 episodes, and you know the opening sequence on that's set on the planet Ueda between our assassin May, who is one of the main villains of the show, and Master Indara, who's played by Carrie-Anne Moss, which was like an absolute banger of a casting, as you can see here in these couple scenes. And I really like this. They start off with a lot of energy, and they start off with all the action punch that you need to get the rest of the story going. These events that happen in the first few minutes of the show, they are going to be very central to the rest of the story. And just as a bit of a warning to all of you, my thoughts from this point on are all going to be very spoilerific. So if you want to avoid those spoilers, please, unfortunately, I have to say this: don't watch the video until you've seen the episodes. So, fair warning to all of you, it's going to be a lot of spoilers. So, anyways, so when they say a Jedi has been murdered, that is Master Indara. May is able to kill Master Indara, and we get the sense that there's some kind of a deep animosity that she has, that's something carried over from her past, possibly. And there's so many questions that are raised by her dialogue and the way that she acts. And we get little, like bits and pieces throughout these two episodes. And overall, I think that these two episodes, they are a very, very strong start to the series. They set the tone of the entire story of how all these characters are going to act, because there's so many different characters in the show, and these two episodes gave us pretty much a rundown on all of them. So whether you have Master Soul as he's there, Jekyllon as Padawan. We have the Jedi Knight Yord Fondor, and we have Master Indara. We have Master Ornestra Ro, May, her twin sister Osha, and so many other characters. Chimere, who is one of the associates of May, and there is an actual mystery here, because in these first two episodes we only get a glimpse of the main villain, who is quite possibly the you know as in the name of the show, the Acolyte. It's probably him or her or it or they, what have you, and it's setting up an interesting mystery, and who really wants all these powerful Jedi killed, because Master Indara and the others that are there with her, who are either successful targets of May or who will be targets of May. You know, there's so much going on with all of them, and are possibly going to be two very strong storylines. One that's set in the present, as May goes on her killing spree, and she is being targeted by Master Soul and his compatriots to bring her to justice, and even her master, the Acolyte. I'm going to call him the Acolyte because I'm pretty sure that's what he's going to end up being. You know, and there's going to be a story from the past, which is what really happened with May, what really happened with Osha, and why Osha could not become a Jedi, and why she left the Order, and why May is targeting all of these masters now. But overall, I'm very happy with the start of the show. It started off really good, like I said, although I'm kind of like bummed by the fact that we only get to see Carrie Ann Moss for like just a few minutes in the first episode, and I don't think she is in the second episode at all. But hopefully she will be there, because as you can see from the trailer and everything else that we've seen, all the teasers and everything, there is a storyline with her that's going to delve more into her past and Master Soul's past, May's past, Pusha's past, and all that. And it was amazing overall, whether it's the duel between Master Indar and May, or the duel between Master Soul and May in episode 2 towards the end. And what I really loved was, how little we actually get of the lightsabers. Because, the movies always gave us such a strong sense of, take out a lightsaber, fight. Whether it's the Jedi or the Sith or whatever, we were so much focused on the dueling skills of all these characters. And even in episode 2, when you have such a great scene between Master Yoda and with Darth Tyrannus, which is Count Dooku, and, they're trying to use their force abilities on each other to gain the upper hand, but then they're like fairly evenly matched. And Count Dooku says something along the lines of, "I see this will not be settled by our mastery of the Force, but with the mastery of lightsabers," something like that. So that is kind of like the theme that exists. And you rarely, if ever, you hear what is the best Force battle between two Force users, and it's always what's the best lightsaber duel or something to that effect. But I like that in these two episodes we focus so much on the non-lightsaber combat. So whether it is as a lot of people call it force foo, which I don't really like the term, because I think that kind of style of the convention of the naming, it's getting a little too much now, especially after John Wick. But I really like that they focused on unarmed combat, and there's probably some inspiration that is taken from the Teras Kasi style of combat that a lot of Jedi practice, and even a lot of the Sith they practice, and it's one of the ways of of fighting without your lightsaber, and we get so much of that in these two episodes. And I'm all for a great lightsaber duel, or even just like even something that's like maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever. Sure, give me that. I'll just like drink it all up, and I'll be happy to the tens. But I really like this approach because it's part of the world building. How do people who don't have lightsabers or they don't have guns, how can they fight against the Jedi? What kind of skills do they need? And of course, you need to be a Force user of some kind for that, because the Jedi, they're not just relying on just you know their sword work or whatever, but they're also using the Force to empower them with speed and reflexes and all of that stuff. So in that aspect, I thought that the unarmed combat scenes that we see with May and Master Indar and Master Soul, I wish they had been a little bit faster, or in terms of either the choreography being faster, or when the fight happens, they use some kind of VFX to make it look like it's faster, and the actors are trying to be as fast as they are, but the VFX makes it look like it's much faster, because I think for me it showcases how the Jedi really employ the Force. And we get so little of that generally. So this would have been really nice to see. But I'm very happy with these scenes. And even as you can see here, when May is fighting with the Jedi Master, Master Turban, she's using a lot of different skills here. But as we'll see later down the road, they're not all successful. And I am, however, concerned with where the storyline might be going, because these episodes, they're quite short, relatively speaking. They're only like 30 minutes or so, whereas I believe with as we saw with Kenobi, as we saw with Ahsoka, I believe they were all like 46 minutes each or whatever. So they were filling out an entire hour of programming. But these are like 30 minutes, and it's only going to be an 8 episodes first season, which I think is way too small. I think it could easily have been like 14, 15 episodes, and there are stories to be told, and there are ways you can manage to extend those stories, and try to give the viewer a more fulfilling experience. Because when I was watching these two episodes, I felt like they got over too quickly. There were some parts that felt like they were a little slow, but on the whole, I think the pacing was fine, and I really enjoyed all the acting. Carrie Ann Moss, she was fantastic. Rebecca Henderson as Master Vanessa Rowe. We don't see much of her, only like bits and pieces in episodes 1 and 2. But I think we're, they're setting us up for a really cool bunch of sequences with her down the line. Especially, when there's a scene in one of the teasers where we see her lightsaber for the first time, and there are two important things about lightsaber. One, it's purple. So after Mace Windu in episode 2, we are seeing purple lightsabers again. You know, episode 2 and 3. But I don't think we've ever seen purple lightsabers again after that on any other character. So this is great to see. But also, it's not just a regular lightsaber; it's a light whip. And the internet's been going crazy about it. But man, I am so excited to see that, because that's part of the fun of all these new bold projects, is how do you take the lightsaber and you do something different with it. That said, I wasn't much of a fan of in episode 7 Kylo Ren's lightsaber, although there is a really good explanation for why his lightsaber is like that. But I thought that was a little too much. But we're getting to see a light whip, which I believe has been in the expanded universe for a long time already, and this is going to be fantastic. And then Jae Jung Lee, I believe his name is. Apologies, I'm just going off the memory here. I didn't have my notes, but as Master Soul, I thought he was fantastic, and he brings. A lot of people say this. He's bringing a lot of Qui-Gon Jinn energy to the series, and Liam Neeson, he was fantastic and everything, but I think Master Soul is a character very much of his own. There are certain callbacks to Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn, but I think he's also much more than that because this is the guy who trusts his emotions, and despite and he's a master, and he's a respected master, and he's in charge of teaching the next generation of Jedi and everything. We see him training not just younglings, like straight younglings, but he's also teaching his own Padawan, Jackie Lon, who's played by Daphne Keane, another fantastic addition to the series, I have to say. And, you know, the way he moves and he talks and the way he has his fighting style and everything, with all the kung fu inspired combat and everything, marvelous. May and Osha, played by Amanda Stenberg, I thought there was a bit of like the story doesn't really give you a lot of good hooks to get into those characters. Yeah, there's a mystery with May, and with Osha, there's all the baggage that she has with having quit the Jedi Order, which happens very rarely. If you are a long-time reader of the expanded universe, then you might know of the Obi-Wan series, which delved into his time as a Padawan. And in the very first book, Obi-Wan was pretty much going to be, I wouldn't say kicked out, but he would have to leave the Order because he hadn't passed his trials yet, but he also hadn't been chosen as a Padawan at that time by another Jedi Knight or a Master, and his chances of being chosen were very slim. And it was only that it was only chance that brought him and Qui-Gon Jinn together. And you can call it chance, or you can call it the will of the Force, or what have you. But those situations exist. Obi-Wan is going to be sent off with the Agricultural Corps on some planet in the Mid Rim, I think. It's been like almost 20 years since I read this book. I don't remember exactly, but this kind of stuff does happen. And Osha left the Order, presumably because she couldn't really access the Force, despite having the capabilities. She was probably just like shut off or whatever. But on the flip side, clearly May has some skills. She's been taught by a mysterious individual, does have a red lightsaber, so he could very well be a Sith, but we don't really know who he really is. He could be the master for Darth Plagueis, who was himself the master of Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine. I'm not sure what the name of the character is. I've seen it on social media and stuff, but I don't exactly remember the name of who the master for Darth Plagueis was. But I do think he was a Bith, although it doesn't really look like we have a Bith here. Quite possibly human, which I think would be a bit of a mistake here. I think we are well due to seeing a really strong non-human type race as a Sith villain, as a major Sith villain. So there's that, and we don't really know like what the gender of the character is or whatever either. So that should be fun to see down the line. But on the whole, there's so many good performances, whether it's Charlie Burnett as York Bondar, or Daphne Keane as Jackie Lon, Amanda Stenberg. Like I said, she is so good in these scenes, and everything, whether it's the lighting or the scene structures and everything, it reminds you so much of episodes 1 and 2, and even bits of episode 3. But this is the kind of Star Wars show that I really want to watch, especially when it's live action, because it brings us so much of what's the really good stuff about Star Wars. All the everything that was a high point in episode 1 with the Neimoidians, with the Republic and everything, and of course, episode 1 has Neimoidians in it, and they're part of the Trade Federation and everything. And we already, with those scenes in the early scenes in episode 1, we see all the these callbacks to why the Neimoidians, they're like, they don't really trust the Jedi and everything, and they're like always ticked off at them and whatnot, and how they're duplicitous, and they're all money grubbing individuals and whatnot. So that was pretty cool stuff. I really love seeing Nine Moedians again. It's been so long, and episode two ends on a really dire note for our main characters, the heroes, because they've already lost two Jedi, and there's more to come, I'm sure. Although I'm hoping that the next Jedi on the list, he doesn't die, because that would kind of suck. We've never really had a Jedi like that before in live action, and it could be the start of something so wonderful for the franchise as a whole. So I hope to see a lot more of that character. But just overall speaking, um, one thing I really like about the story is that we don't spend too much time on prevaricating or going down the hole with all these misconceptions and everything, because the story, that's where it hooks you throughout the first two episodes. It's like, these are the obvious points in television storytelling where, here the character's going to spend so much time just, arguing amongst themselves or having misconceptions about each other. Oh, and, just basically just being in conflict in like, the most obvious, the most trope ways. And that's where your expectations are kind of subverted, because the writers don't really do that. And I really enjoyed that. It seemed fresh, because this is a really tight story that they're telling. It's 8 episodes, 30 minutes an episode. So that's like almost 4 hours of story. It doesn't really leave a lot of room where you can just waste time. And it's like, we know what's happening, right? So these characters, they have to come to these realizations, and it happens, and what I would say is a very normal time frame. We don't spend too long on it, and even when the characters are dissenting, such as between Master Soul and Jedi Knight Yord, they have a disagreement, but it's like, okay, Master, I'm going to listen to you. I have my doubts. I've expressed them. I'm going to move on. And it's, I guess superhero television has kind of ruined things for me. These kind of things happen so much, but this is really good, and I really enjoyed the overall look at the series with these 2 episodes. And as you can see in the trailer just a few seconds ago, we still have one more character left, one more character from the main cast that's left, Jodie Turner-Smith, and she plays Mother Anisea, which, if I'm correct with what is said during these 2 episodes, she is the mother to May and Osha, and presumably on her planet, she was a very important individual. And I'm really excited to see what all that backstory is, what all the mystery is with why May wants to kill all these Jedi Masters, and the coming together of the twins. It's going to be fun, and there's so much promise here, and I think that a really strong script for the first 2 episodes, a really strong performance from pretty much everybody, and really good cinematography, really good, amazing visuals. Like, all that's the best of Star Wars. Some really good droid designs, especially good ship designs, and just having more of a look at the Jedi Order itself and the rest of the galaxy. And they've been bringing in stuff from the expanded universe, the old like CorpSec, which was the corporate sector, which is, if I remember right, it's in the south of the galaxy. If you're looking at one of the maps from the old Del Rey books, it's in the southeast of the galaxy, somewhere near Hut Space. It's pretty much an area overrun with corporations and everything, or whatever is the case. And they bring that in. And as I saw on social media yesterday after watching these 2 episodes, they're pulling in a lot of stuff from the High Republic novels as well. And, the writers who came up with those things, they're so excited to see all this translate. And I really like, that this was a melding of the past, the present, and the future. The past being what we had with the expanded universe, the present being what's happening right now across Star Wars as a whole, with all the new movies and the new shows, whether it's animated, whether it's live action, what have you, and stuff that's in the future because of the potential of the show and the next 6 episodes. I think we have a really good opportunity here to spin off the franchise. So we already have, this we have right now we have 3 different timelines going on. We have the timeline in the present, which is what is happening with the Republic post Episode 6, when Coruscant has been conquered and the Republic has established itself, and all that's happening in Ahsoka. It's happening in the Mandalorian, and then we have stuff that's coming up with the Episode 10, which is going to be the next Daisy Ridley movie with Rey Skywalker, and we have all this stuff that's set, before the movies, and it's a very important phase because they need to start strong, which they did. They're telling a good story, which I think that they are, and like I said, so much potential, and I have to say that all the hype I was feeling for this show over the last several months, especially in the last few weeks, as there was a 4 episode special screening held in LA, and a lot of content creators were invited and influencers were invited, and they all got to see the first 4 episodes, and there was so much hype coming in. Uh, People didn't give specifics until the show began 2 days ago, and I feel that hype is justified. I think this, for me, I think we're in a great place where Star Wars is concerned because we have shows like The Mandalorian, we have Ahsoka, now we have this, and there's so much potential here for like 2, 3 seasons more after this. After this, so like total 3, 4 seasons, and you know, going back even further, and there was the whole stuff that was said at the dawn of the Jedi. That project was canceled, unfortunately, which I hope it's restarted in some way. But I think it's the best time ever to be a Star Wars fan because you have so much that addresses different needs. So if you want the classic stuff, you have Ahsoka. If you want the classic stuff with a twist, you have Andor, you have The Mandalorian. If you want the movie goodness, you have the stuff that's coming up with Episode 10 and beyond. If you want all of this stuff from the non Lucas era, then you have the Acolyte, and it's like, how can you not love this? Basically, and okay, so I'm sorry, I'm rambling quite a bit here, but overall, let's just say that this episode, this series, sorry, it started off on a very high note, and I expect that to continue over the next 6 weeks as we see the next few episodes, and I hope it ends on an absolute banger, and that they announce season 2 very soon. There's absolutely no reason I see not to do that because, like I said earlier, there's so much potential here, not just for these characters, but to see more of the galaxy and create a bigger world than just the Skywalker saga or what's happening with the Mandalorian and stuff like that. So, end of the video. My recommendation: absolutely go out and watch the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. Whether you're an old fan, you're a new fan, or this is going to be your first ever Star Wars thing, I think you're going to love it. Great characters, great story, great visuals, and this is what the magic of Star Wars is all about. Sure, there's the stuff where bits and pieces that are aimed at different audiences all over the board, but I think this is the kind of show that is going to appeal to a much larger pool of viewers, of fans, and just like with the Mandalorian and with Ahsoka, we're seeing so much more of the galaxy than just the condensed stuff with the Skywalker saga. And, you know, basically, job well done, Star Wars. Job well done, Leslie Headland, who's the director and the showrunner, and the entire cast. You all have done an amazing job with these first two episodes, and I cannot wait until next Wednesday to watch next episode. And I hope that this is going to be one of the biggest successes of the year, not just for Star Wars, but just sci-fi storytelling overall, because I just love this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I'm like deeply satisfied. So, anyways, that's me. I know this video went on a bit too long, but I apologize, and I just leave you with the promise that I had a hell of a time with this, and I could not be any more excited than I already am. So make do of that what you will, and I'll see you guys next week when I go over episode 3, and hopefully I can talk in much more detail about the story, because I didn't want to give too much away here, but there were some things I want to talk about that were very specific, and so it was a whole thing I said in the beginning about spoilers and everything. So anyways, guys, that's it. See you guys soon.